take a slow breath and think about your morning. Not the rush, not the noise, not the responsibilities waiting for you. Just that first moment. That quiet second when your eyes open and the world hasn't started demanding anything yet. What is the very first thing you reach for? Your phone? The curtains? Or maybe that warm cup waiting in the kitchen? For many of us, mornings don't truly begin with sunlight. They begin with a smell. Deep, rich, comforting. Coffee. It curls through the air like a whisper, gently telling your brain, wake up, it's time. Today, more than 2 billion cups of coffee are consumed every single day. 2 billion. That means at this exact moment, somewhere in the world, someone is wrapping their hands around a warm mug. A student preparing for an exam, a writer staring at a blank page, a father getting ready for work, a dreamer planning their future. Coffee has become the silent partner of human ambition. It sits beside our biggest ideas, our late-night struggles, our early morning hopes. But here's the strange thing. Coffee wasn't invented. No scientist created it, no king demanded it, no empire planned it. It wasn't born in a laboratory. It was born by accident. And long before cafes, long before cities, long before alarms and deadlines, the world lived very differently. Before coffee, life followed the sun. When the sun rose, people worked. When the sun fell, people rested. Darkness meant sleep. There was no simple way to stay awake, no drink to sharpen the mind. Only water, milk, and sometimes wine or beer. But those drinks made people slow, heavy, sleepy. They softened the mind instead of sharpening it. If you wanted to stay awake at night, you simply suffered through it. And for many people, that was a problem. Travelers crossing deserts, scholars studying by candlelight, monks praying through the night. They all needed something that could keep the body calm, but the mind alive. Humanity didn't know it yet, but it was waiting for coffee. And our story begins far away from everything we know today, high in the green mountains of Ethiopia, a land of rolling hills, cool air, wild forests, and endless skies. More than 1,000 years ago, a young shepherd walked those hills every day. His name was Kaldi. He wasn't important, he wasn't famous, just a simple goat herd. Each morning he took his animals into the highlands to graze. Same path, same sky, same quiet life. The kind of life where nothing ever really changes. Until one day, something strange happened. His goats began acting different. Not tired, not slow, but wild. They were jumping, running, kicking their legs into the air, almost dancing. Kaldi stood still, confused. He had watched these goats his whole life. They had never behaved like this. It was as if they had discovered some secret energy hidden in the earth. So he followed them, through bushes, through trees, across the hillside, and then he saw it. A small shrub, dark green leaves, bright red berries glowing in the sunlight like tiny rubies. The goats were eating them. And moments later, bursting with life. Kaldi knelt down, picked one, turned it in his fingers. It looked ordinary, just another wild fruit. But curiosity is a powerful thing. He tasted it. At first, nothing. Then slowly, his heartbeat quickened. His eyes felt clearer. The fog in his mind disappeared. He felt awake. Not nervous, not dizzy, just alive, as if the world had suddenly turned sharper, colors brighter, thoughts faster. He smiled. "These berries are special," he whispered. So he gathered a handful and walked to a nearby monastery. Inside were monks, quiet men devoted to prayer and study. Kaldi excitedly told them what happened, but the head monk frowned. Anything that makes animals act strangely must be dangerous, he thought. The work of the devil, he muttered. Without hesitation, he threw the berries into the fire. Kaldi watched helplessly. But then, something unexpected happened. The room filled with a smell. Rich, warm, sweet, unlike anything they had ever known. The berries began to roast, crackling softly in the flames, releasing an aroma so beautiful it stopped everyone. The monks looked at each other. Fear turned into curiosity. They pulled the roasted seeds from the fire, crushed them, mixed the dark powder with hot water, and watched as the liquid turned deep brown, almost black. Carefully, they tasted it. That night, something incredible happened. They didn't grow tired. Their eyes stayed open. Their minds stayed sharp. They prayed longer, read longer, focused longer. For the first time, they could stay awake without struggle, without whine, without exhaustion. Just calm, steady energy. That night, the first cup of coffee was born. Not from science, not from design, but from goats, from fire, from accident, and from one curious heart that dared to try something new. Kaldi went back to his hills. The monks returned to their prayers. None of them knew that this small moment, this tiny discovery, would travel across oceans, shape civilizations, start revolutions, build empires, and one day be sitting quietly in your hands every morning. All from a simple question: what happens if I taste this? Sometimes the greatest changes in history begin with the smallest moments, and this was only the beginning. The first cup of coffee did not change the world overnight. There were no celebrations, no announcements. No one wrote history that day. It was just a small drink, shared quietly between a few tired monks in the mountains. But sometimes the smallest sparks travel the farthest, and coffee was about to begin a journey no one could stop. It started with footsteps, sandals scraping against stone paths, caravans moving slowly through dust and wind, merchants crossing hills with salt, spices, silk, and now, small sacks of strange, dark beans. From the green highlands of Ethiopia, the beans crossed the narrow waters of the Red Sea and reached a new land, Yemen, a land of mountains and deserts, of hot days and cold nights, of traders, travelers, and long, exhausting journeys. Here, coffee found its true home, because Yemen was full of people who needed to stay awake, not for work, not for money, but for something deeper: faith. In the quiet corners of the night, there lived groups of spiritual seekers known as Sufism. Sufi monks, men who believed that the stillness of midnight brought them closer to God. While the world slept, they prayed, they chanted, they meditated for hours, sometimes until dawn. But their bodies were human. Their eyes grew heavy, their heads nodded, their prayers slowed. They needed something to keep their minds alive. Something gentle, something steady, something that wouldn't cloud the heart like wine. And then they discovered the beans. At first, they chewed them raw, bitter, hard, unpleasant, but energizing. Then someone tried something different. Someone placed the beans on a small metal pan over a fire. The heat changed everything. The beans cracked, darkened, released a smell so deep and rich it filled the air like perfume. It was warm, comforting, almost magical. They crushed the roasted beans with stones, mixed the powder with hot water, and watched the liquid turn dark like the night sky. When they drank it, their eyes opened wider. Their thoughts became clearer. Their prayers grew longer. Hours passed, but they did not feel tired. For the first time in their lives, they could sit through the entire night in calm focus. No struggle, no sleepiness, just quiet awareness. They called it kahwa, the drink that gives strength. And slowly, cup by cup, it became part of their ritual. Before every night prayer, they brewed it, carefully, patiently, roasting by ear, listening for the tiny cracks, smelling the smoke, guessing the perfect moment. There were no machines, no measurements, only instinct. Sometimes it burned, sometimes it tasted too weak, sometimes too bitter. But they kept trying, learning, adjusting. Coffee wasn't invented in a lab. It was shaped by mistakes, by hands, by fire, by patience. And word began to spread. Travelers noticed the monks staying awake all night. "How do you not sleep?" they asked. The monks smiled and offered them a cup. Soon, traders carried the beans on long journeys, across deserts, through markets, into towns, into cities. And something beautiful happened. Coffee left the monastery and entered everyday life. In small homes, families began brewing it together at sunrise. In marketplaces, sellers served it from clay pots. But the biggest change came when people began gathering, not to pray, not to work, just to sit and talk. Small rooms opened where anyone could enter, buy a cup and stay for hours, talking, laughing, debating, sharing ideas. These were the world's first coffee houses. Simple places, wooden benches, lantern light, steam rising into the air. But inside those walls, something new was happening. People weren't sleepy, they weren't drunk, they were awake, alert, curious. Conversations lasted longer, ideas grew sharper, stories grew deeper. Poets recited verses, scholars discussed philosophy, merchants planned businesses, strangers became friends. Coffee didn't just wake the body, it woke the mind. And for the first time in history, there was a drink that made people think more clearly. Imagine that. For thousands of years, mornings began with beer or wine, drinks that slowed the brain. Now, suddenly, there was something that did the opposite. Something that sharpened thought, focused attention, extended the day. It changed everything. Nights grew longer, work became more productive, conversations more meaningful. It was as if humanity had discovered extra hours hidden inside time itself, and all of it from a small roasted seed. What the monks didn't realize, what the traders didn't realize, was that they weren't just sharing a drink, they were spreading a revolution. Because when people gather and stay awake and talk freely, new ideas are born. And new ideas change the world. Coffee was no longer just a discovery, it was becoming culture, a ritual, a symbol of connection. From the hills of Ethiopia to the deserts of Yemen to the crowded streets of growing cities, the dark drink was quietly preparing something bigger, something powerful. Soon, it would reach great empires, great religions, great kings. And not everyone would be happy about it, because a drink that keeps people awake also keeps them thinking, and thinking people can be dangerous. But that is the next chapter. By the time coffee left the quiet walls of monasteries, it was no longer just a drink. It was a habit, a ritual, a reason for people to gather. And wherever people gather, something powerful happens. They talk, they question, they think. And throughout history, nothing has frightened rulers more than people who think. At first, coffee moved gently through the cities of the Middle East, through markets filled with spices, through narrow streets glowing with lantern light, into homes, into hands, into everyday life. But then, something new appeared. Small places began opening their doors. Not temples, not shops, not taverns. Something different. Rooms with benches, clay cups, the smell of roasting beans floating in the air. Places where strangers could sit together for hours, talking, laughing, debating. These were the first coffee houses, and they spread quickly through cities like Mecca and Cairo. Inside, the air was alive. Merchants discussed trade routes, poets recited verses, scholars argued philosophy. Travelers shared stories from distant lands. There was music. There was laughter. There were ideas. Lots of ideas. And for the first time, people stayed awake long after sunset. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Coffee had changed the rhythm of life. Night was no longer for sleeping. It was for thinking. And thinking changes everything. Soon, these coffee houses earned a nickname, the Schools of the Wise, because you didn't just drink there. You learned, you listened, you grew. But outside those doors, some leaders were watching, and they didn't like what they saw. Groups of men gathering, talking freely, questioning authority, planning things. To a ruler, that looked less like conversation and more like rebellion. In the early 1500s, the governor of Mecca grew suspicious. He walked past the cafes and heard loud debates inside. Politics, religion, justice, power. People weren't whispering, they were speaking boldly. Fear crept into his mind. What if these places create trouble, he wondered. What if they turn people against me? So he did what frightened leaders often do. He banned coffee, declared it dangerous, closed the coffee houses, ordered doors shut. Some even called it sinful. The drink of the devil, they said. Imagine that, a simple cup of dark liquid treated like a weapon. But something strange happened. People didn't stop. They couldn't. Coffee had already become part of their lives, so they met secretly, in small rooms, behind closed curtains, sharing cups in whispers like it was forbidden treasure. Because to them, coffee wasn't rebellion, it was freedom. Freedom to talk, freedom to think, freedom to stay awake and dream bigger. And slowly, quietly, the bans faded. Because you can outlaw a drink, but you cannot outlaw curiosity. And coffee kept traveling, across borders, across oceans, into a new world, Europe. When coffee first arrived in European ports, people were confused. It was dark, bitter, strange, nothing like their usual drinks. At the time, most Europeans drank beer or wine even at breakfast. Water wasn't always safe, so alcohol was normal. But alcohol made people slow, foggy, sleepy. Coffee did the opposite. It sharpened the mind, and that scared some people. Some church leaders called it sinful. It comes from Muslim lands, they said. It must be evil. The drink became controversial, debated, whispered about, until finally, someone made a bold decision. Pope Clement VIII himself decided to taste it. If it was truly the devil's drink, he would know. The cup was placed in his hands, steam rising slowly, the room silent. He took a sip, paused, then smiled. "This drink is too delicious to be evil," he said. "It would be a shame to let only others enjoy it." With that, coffee was blessed, and Europe welcomed it. But what happened next, no one expected. Coffee houses exploded across cities like London, Paris, and Vienna. On almost every corner, a small door, a warm glow inside, the smell of coffee pulling people in. For the price of a single penny, you could sit all day, listening, talking, learning. They called them penny universities, because for the cost of one cup, you could gain an education. Inside those rooms, history quietly shifted. Writers drafted newspapers, scientists sketched inventions, businessmen planned companies, thinkers debated freedom and democracy. Ideas that would change nations were born beside small cups of coffee. One coffee house eventually became Lloyd's of London. Another became the London Stock Exchange. Entire financial systems born over coffee. And something else changed too. Mornings. Before coffee, mornings were slow. People drank alcohol and worked half awake. After coffee, people were sharp, focused, alert. Factories ran better. Offices worked faster. creativity exploded. It was as if humanity had finally woken up, not just from sleep, but from centuries of mental fog. Coffee didn't just give energy, it gave clarity, and clarity builds civilizations. But the journey wasn't over, because now coffee wasn't just a drink or an idea, it was becoming an industry. Plantations, ships, factories, empires built around a single bean, and the world was about to change again, forever. By the time coffee reached Europe, it was no longer just a drink. It was momentum. It was energy. It was an idea that refused to slow down. And like all powerful ideas, it began to travel, farther than anyone imagined, across oceans, across continents, across empires. What started as a few wild berries in the mountains of Ethiopia was now becoming something much bigger, something global. Ships began carrying it, wooden vessels rocking against violent waves. Inside their dark storage rooms, small sacks filled with beans that smelled faintly of earth and fire. Beans that would soon change entire economies. Nations wanted it. Kings wanted it. Traders chased it like gold. At first, Arab merchants tried to protect their secret. They roasted the beans before selling them so no one else could plant them. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. Soon, live plants were smuggled out, hidden on ships, carried across seas, planted in distant lands. Coffee trees began appearing everywhere sunlight touched the tropics, in the lush hills of Brazil, in the misty mountains of Colombia, in the warm valleys of Vietnam. Green fields stretched for miles, endless rows of coffee trees dancing in the wind. For the first time, coffee wasn't wild anymore. It was cultivated, organized, industrial. But growth came with a price. Behind every cup, there were hands. Farmers wakened before sunrise, picking cherries one by one, carrying heavy baskets on tired backs. Long days under hot sun. Coffee brought wealth to cities far away, but life on the farms was often hard. History isn't always romantic. Sometimes it's complicated. But still, the drink kept moving, from farms to ports, from ports to factories, from factories to homes. The 1800s changed everything again. Huge machines replaced small pans, massive metal roasters spun endlessly. Steam filled the air. The smell of coffee drifted through entire neighborhoods. Factories packaged it faster than ever before. For the first time, coffee wasn't just for monks, or traders, or thinkers. It was for everyone. Then came another invention. Small, simple, revolutionary. The espresso machine, born in the cafes of Rome and Milan. Suddenly, coffee wasn't slow anymore. It was fast, strong, bold. A quick burst of energy for a fast-moving world. People stood at counters, drank in seconds, and rushed back into life. Then came instant coffee. Tiny crystals, hot water, done. Soldiers carried it during wars. Workers carried it to factories. Travelers packed it in bags. Coffee had become portable, modern, everywhere. And then, something beautiful happened. Coffee stopped being just fuel. It became feeling. Think about it. How many memories do you have with coffee? Late night talks with friends, early mornings with family, first dates, study sessions, big ideas scribbled into notebooks, quiet moments alone by a window while rain falls outside. Coffee became more than caffeine. It became comfort, a pause button in a busy life, a small daily ritual that says, slow down, breathe, you're here. Today, more than 2 billion cups are consumed every single day. From crowded streets in New York City to tiny cafes in Istanbul to quiet homes anywhere in the world. Different languages, different cultures, different lives, but the same cup. It's incredible when you think about it. A shepherd and his dancing goats, monks praying through the night, Desert traders, hidden cafes, kings who tried to ban it, thinkers who built revolutions, farmers under the sun, baristas crafting art in foam. And now, you, holding a cup, right here, right now, all connected by the same simple drink. Coffee didn't just wake us up, it helped humanity stay awake. Awake to ideas, awake to creativity, awake to each other. From fire and berries to machines and cities, coffee reminds us of something important, that sometimes the smallest discoveries create the biggest changes. All because one curious person asked, "What happens if I try this?" So tomorrow morning, when you take that first sip, pause for just a second. Remember the mountains, the monks, the caravans, the revolutions, the centuries of hands that carried that cup to you. Because the story of coffee isn't just about a drink. It's about us, our curiosity, our struggle, our connection, our shared human story. And if you enjoyed this journey through time, if this story made your next cup feel a little more meaningful, then you already know what to do. Take a second, like the video, share it with someone you'd drink coffee with, and subscribe for more stories that hide inside the simple things we use every day. Because sometimes, history isn't found in palaces or wars. Sometimes, it's waiting quietly in your hands.